she says you're in for a big treat. It might be a big disappointment after that setup. So we'll see. But yeah, I really want this to be valuable for you guys. So the whole talk is basically me sharing the things I wish someone would have told me when I was in your shoes. But I've said it a few times now, and Molly's heard it a lot of times. So I'd be happy to go a different direction if you have questions for me. I love your questions, is my point. So put them in the chat. I'm going to have, just to keep you guys engaged and focused and paying attention, because that can challenge me. Zoom is, I've got throughout to ask you guys. Would love for you to jump in the chat. And so if you don't have your name in your little screen, you might rename yourself, because I see a few that I wouldn't be able to talk to you very well because I don't see your name. With that, I'm going to share my screen, but please jump in the chat, ask questions, engage as much as you can. I enjoy that. But I'm really honored to be here. I think it's a crazy privilege to be able to speak into this moment in your life. This is one of the most important, I would say, seasons of your life as you transition into the professional world, as you graduate, as you just make this big change. And so I show up anytime Molly wants me to or asks me to, because I just think it's a gift and opportunity to spend some time with you all, and I enjoy it. So the title here is 5 Ways to Crush Your First Real Job. The reason is because I think there's a lot you don't know until you're out there in that space. And not that you haven't had jobs, I'm sure many of you are working now, but there is something different about that kind of, post-college career-minded space, professional job. And I want to help you kind of get a heads up, be prepared, and not miss this moment to really crush it. So, but before I get into that, I do like to start by giving you some context. So context being, who am I? What's my journey? Why am I sharing these things? And so we'll start with there. But like I said, questions are coming. So the first one's a warm up. Anybody know what movie this is from? And really, if you don't, just say no, because I think it's more entertaining to me that some people don't know this movie, because I grew up watching this movie. But so I was 8, so you guys probably weren't alive yet, which is really funny. So Little Rascals, okay. So this is the Little Rascals movie in 1994. So all right, just making sure some of you are paying attention. I didn't get very many, just like 3 or 4. So feel free to chat as much as you want there, because I want to make sure you're engaged. So who am I and why am I here? The story arc in terms of branding looks something like this. And last class, no one knew what that first logo was. Does anybody in this class know what that logo is over here? It's old, it's kind of vintage. So, but I was kind of surprised that no one knew what it was. But anyway, that was my first logo affiliation. So put in the chat if you know what that is. I'm like, surely someone. Anyway, this is like kind of hurtful, but it's okay. No, okay. Well, anyway, I guess you guys must all be from Texas or something. So, but yeah, it's so that was my high school. It's the Russellville High School. It's just a couple hours away. But Cyclones, they're the Cyclones. So I was a Cyclone, and then I was a Razorback, and then I worked at Dayspring, C Company, 5Q, Pure Charity, and now I'm at Branches, and I'm going to unpack that little journey. But I love logos, I love brands, so I thought I would show you guys those. And then share a little bit about my personal story. So last time I tried to do it in 60 seconds, and I wasn't even close, so I'm not even going to try. I'm not going to turn this timer on this time. That was a bad idea. So I just have to keep it to less than 60 minutes. So it is my life story. But I grew up not with a lot of money. This was our house for a while. I went back and took this picture years later. So that's but I just dreamed of someday being successful, someday having money and means, someday being known for it. And I wanted to be so wealthy that I had a garage for my Ferraris and Viper, and that I could have a car wash built in that would wash my cars every day before I went out to my big fancy business job. And my values have changed dramatically, and now I realize that that was not as important as I thought it was, but I'll share about that story in a second. But you know, I in 8th grade dated this girl, Stephanie. She was taller than me, so she had to take her shoes off for this picture. Still a little taller than me in the picture, and that was a big day for me because I shaved for the first time ever, just because I felt like in going to my first dance, I should probably shave. Didn't really need to, but I that was a big day for a lot of reasons. And then actually, I think 2 days later, she broke my heart on Monday. Basically, like, hey, you're a little too serious. You know, we're in 8th grade. Like, gonna have to break this off. But I stuck with it and continued. I knew she was the one, and we went to prom together and dated as 11th graders and 12th graders, and really ever since. So went to the U of A. We're both Razorbacks, and then got married right out of college. So a big part of my story, obviously, is my high school sweetheart, my bride. We've been married 12 years, 13 years now. So crazy. It's going fast. And so this is the cover. They put us on the magazine cover. I mean, when I say they, it was her mom's magazine. So I just like to brag about that, but then I have to realize that it's not that awesome after all. And then we had our first daughter, of course, lots of Razorback gear on our dog until sadly our dog got kicked out to my mom's house when she tried to bite our baby. But anyway, she was our baby until we had babies. And then we had our first girl, Nora, when we were living in Texas in Arlington, in the DFW area. And of course, put her in Razorback gear. You're going to notice a theme here. And then had our second daughter, Ruby, still living in Texas there, and put her in Razorback gear. Isn't that cute? Oh my goodness. Sorry. I'm just probably going to show you pictures all day of my daughters. And then like to call the hogs in the backyard, taught them how to do that in Arlington just to make sure they were going to be Razorbacks. And so this is our third daughter, Mabel. We just had her a year ago. She's almost 1. And this is her 2 days ago, and this is her yesterday. So, oh my goodness, sorry. I just love my pictures of my daughters. I'm absolutely obsessed with them, and that's all I want to talk about. So how many photos did I just show you? Just, again, seeing if anybody's paying attention. If you say 1 or 50, you must not have been paying attention. 10, 12. Oh, good guesses, good guesses. 12. Oh, thanks for the comment about the names, Molly. I appreciate that. You spend a lot of time trying to name a child, and it is hard. It is very hard. So thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Nobody's got it yet, I don't think. Oh, there it is, 14. Max. We also have, Max got it, 14. So good guesses. Good job. We also have a hashtag for all our daughters, of course. That was a really cool thing when I was having our first one. Now it's just normal. Okay. So that's my personal life. It's a big deal for me. It really shapes who I am, and it's all integrated, by the way. Like your personal, professional life. I mean, I believe it's best to live an integrated life. So I wanted to share that with you, but also my kind of professional life journey. I wanted to share that as well. So I look back and kind of don't know why I did this, but I really only applied at U of A. I loved the idea of going to the Walton College of Business. I knew I wanted to be in marketing. I knew I wanted to be in business. I always had a fascination with marketing because it combined the science and art, this creative and this kind of scientific minds, and I enjoyed all of it. And so I wanted to go be a part of Sam Walton College of Business, and that's what I did. I never changed my mind. Still love doing that type of work. But I will say this, a lot of unexpected things happened in college. So I may not have changed my major, but a lot changed in my life. When I was a freshman and hanging out in Pomfret, it's been there a long time. So I was in my girlfriend Stephanie's dorm room and found out my dad had cancer. And so the next year or so walked through that journey. It was really difficult. And he passed away when I was a sophomore, and I was 19. And so I actually had to drop out a semester to just be with my mom and try to heal and grieve. And it was really hard. He was one of my best friends, really, really close to my dad. And so it was just super difficult. And then also in college, I made some huge mistakes. I hurt people that I cared about. I was just a little bit foolish and selfish, I would say, just trying to grow up. And just looking back, it's embarrassing and shameful to even think about some of those things, but it's also really, I'm grateful because I learned a lot. I grew a lot. It's actually in those hard things like losing a parent or making mistakes. Those are the times, if we choose for it to be the times that we grow the most. And I feel like I grew and matured a lot really fast because of all this happening in my life. Also, in this time, the thing that happened to me is my personal story. I grew up going to church, but not really knowing or prioritizing that side of my life a whole lot until I actually, for the first time, decided to actually read the Bible myself and hang out with other people that believed. And I fell in love with Jesus, and that wrecked me and made me just completely blew my mind that that even in the midst of these big mistakes I'd made, even in these kind of this really difficult situations, that I was loved and cared for by God. And so it was just mind blowing to me. Honestly, it changed everything for me. And I thought, I forget the business world, forget this whole wanting to be rich and successful. Like that's, I started to think, well, that's not where it's at. I need to go tell everybody what I just found out. I got to share this. And I was really zealous, but I was kind of not sure what to do with it all. And so I started looking at seminary and thinking, okay, I guess I need to be a pastor or a missionary or something. This whole business marketing thing I love, I guess, isn't for me anymore. But that didn't feel right. I had conflict inside of me. And so after a few months of considering that, I stopped to pray. And in that time, I felt like God was really clear that you can do both. You can. I did wire you for marketing and business. You're going to do that, but you can also do that for me and for purpose and for, with that passion that you have. And so that kind of combination, that intersection between my purpose, which happens to be, sharing this amazing story that I learned in the Bible. That's my purpose. Yours is probably something different, but that purpose, intersecting with my passion for marketing, business, and the skill set that I developed, that's really been my career journey. Like that defines the jobs that I've had and the work I'm currently doing. So it's an important part of my story. My first job and the first way that I did this was at Dayspring. I was not so sure about Dayspring when Molly first told me about Dayspring. I thought it was kind of a brand for my grandma with a little, just not for me. But then I actually gave it a chance. I actually went and met people and experienced the brand and the culture. I fell in love with it. And so this was a quote on the wall: our motivation is ministry, our method is business, our message is Jesus. And this was written on the wall. And I remember thinking that's exactly what I'm looking for. And that's what Dayspring's all about. So I just want to encourage you that I put this in here because you might find purpose and alignment in unexpected places. I didn't expect to find it that day. But I love my job there. And in Dayspring, I led the digital marketing team, and I had to kind of teach myself digital marketing. I knew concepts of marketing principles and heard a lot about, the CPG world. And I kind of knew a little bit about that, but all of a sudden this digital marketing was blowing up, and I had to learn what SEO and affiliate marketing and social media, create a Twitter and Instagram account for Dayspring. And it was a whole new world, and it was a lot of fun, and I got to learn that. But about 4 years into it, I felt kind of this draw toward this nonprofit called Seed Company, and they had a job that was the vice president of digital marketing. And it was a really big decision because it meant we would have to leave Northwest Arkansas and move to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we loved it here. And so I was trying to make that decision. And it was a Sunday, and I had to make the decision on Monday. And just out of nowhere, these two individuals at church walked up to me at church and asked me and my friend if we would explain to them the whole Bible, which I don't know if you know much about the Bible, but it's big and there's a lot there. So it was quite the challenge, but we tried. So we spent an hour and a half going through every book and using our study notes quite a bit to help explain every book of the Bible. But for that whole hour and a half, they were hovering over it, just hungry, literally devouring it as if it was, the only food on the planet, and they were starving. And at one point, she had to go to the restroom, and she literally got up and sprinted down the hallway and sprinted back. She didn't want to miss anything. And so after that experience, I'm walking away, literally just moments after this, and it's just very clear to me that I'm supposed to take this job, because this company, I think I forgot to mention, what they do is Bible translation. They bring the Bible to languages that don't have it, and language was the biggest barrier for these people. The Bible we were looking at was in English, and that wasn't their first language. And so I took the job, and we moved to Texas. Seed Company is an incredible organization. I love it, and they bring the Bible into these languages around the world that don't have it. I'm going to stop and ask a question now. If you had to guess, how many languages do you think are in the world? Just give me a number. Put it in the chat.
Well, if they're putting this in the chat, Jesse, I have to say, I know we went back and forth on different days for you to come in to speak. And I'll tell you, I love it when you see reasons behind how things happen. One of our sweet students lost his mom unexpectedly night before last. So they're not on this Zoom. And so this is such a good reminder to me of all the dominoes that are going to come out of that forever impact. And I think I was supposed to rehear your story today.
Yeah. Wow.
The reminder.
Yeah. So hard.
So hard.
Yeah, it is interesting, the timing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, thank you for the guesses. This is fascinating. We have a range from 14 to 600,000. That's quite a bit of range right there. Typically, people do come in under. Most of you guys did. So there is actually 7,000 or so, a little over 7,000 languages in the world, which is fascinating. For English speakers in America, we're like, everybody speaks English, right? And yeah, a lot of the world does, but most of the world, it's not their first language, right? It's not their heart language. And so it's hard to understand something as deep as the Bible, as complex, when you're trying to learn it in a different language. And so the Seed Company's mission is to get the Bible into every language, which is a lot of work, because translating that is important, and it's a big deal. So it was pretty cool. We moved to Texas, sold our house, ate Texas-shaped waffles, embraced the Texas life. I'm guessing several of you from Texas, so I'm gonna, so encouraging creativity and innovation. Let me jump into this. So this first week at Seed Company, staff of 300 people, and my boss comes to me, I think on my first day, and said, "Hey, by the way, we're having these all staff meetings, which only happens once a year." And that was my first week, which was interesting. It's good in some ways, but hard in others. And the whole staff were together at this hotel, and we want you to present on stage to 300 people, and we want you to make it about creativity and innovation. And this was a core value of Seed Company, and I created my slides and made them all in Google Drive, and redesigned them myself, and really tried to spend a lot of time. This was my first impression in front of the whole company, right? So I had to get it right. I had to make it awesome. And but then just right before I presented, like the day before, somebody sent me the template. I didn't know there was a template, and they said, "Here's your slide template." And it had it was pretty ugly, honestly. The brand at the time was pretty ugly, and it was like, here's your template, plug in your slides. And so what do you think I did? I think I used the template because, hey, I was like new. I didn't want to ruffle feathers. Or do you think I used my designs? Curious. Template or no template? Put it in the chat. I want to hear. Gosh, yeah, you guys, man. Okay, so you're right. I didn't use the template. It was hard, though. It was really hard. It's hard to be the new person and break the status quo. And that's what I was trying to do. And it felt like a small thing at the time, but this became a big part of my career at this company, and really everywhere I go, is challenging the status quo, challenging the norm. And so literally breaking out of the template a little bit. And since I was talking about creativity and innovation, I felt like I had to say let's use something different here, not the same. So I'm not sure that was a good presentation, if I'm honest. Like, it was like crickets. Like I think it was so out there for people. They were just literally like, he didn't use the template. But I think everybody in the audience was like, what is he talking about? But you know, I gave it my all, and I didn't use the template, and I think that was a win. So I'll keep moving. But I got the chance. I think because of pushing against the status quo, pushing against that, I went from leading the digital team of 3 or 4 people to my boss asked me at 20, I was 27 years old, to be the vice president of the entire marketing creative communications team. And I got to restructure this all over me. And it was awesome, but it was very challenging. And I had to learn leadership the hard way. Leading a team is is a whole different skill set than being good at marketing, and so having to learn how to lead well and supervise was a challenge. Don't underestimate it. And so I spent the whole first year making mistakes, failing, forgetting to include people, micromanaging sometimes, not micromanaging enough the next day. Like it was just, all the things. And so I had to learn how to lead. And so in that job, I also got the amazing privilege to rebrand and redesign all of C Company's messaging and logo and photography style, voice, everything. And you can kind of see some of that here. So we redesigned the periodical. We actually won an award for our print piece, first place in our industry. And then out of nowhere, really felt like kind of a shock, but I was probably at the peak of my career at the moment. But got the chance, or not the chance, got the kind of desire, and felt like pulled back home to Northwest Arkansas. We really missed Northwest Arkansas. Our family was here. We had 2 children at the time, and we decided to move back. Our friends threw us a Texodus party because, we were studying Exodus and they thought it was funny. And then I worked for a company called 5Q. It's a really amazing company. They worked with they were a creative agency, a marketing agency that worked with nonprofits like Seed Company. So I really understood it, but I got to kind of work with several different nonprofits, several different large organizations, and I learned a lot in that time. I wasn't there for long because I actually got let go, and it was really hard. It was unexpected. I was the vice president over the marketing for their agency, and the agency was transitioning under another product brand. And so it wasn't so much because of performance, but it was still shocking, and it was really hard for me. And I just willingly left the vice president over this dream company, this amazing job at Seed Company. Literally, couldn't get any better. Willingly left that to go work at 5Q, and then lost my job like 6 months later. And so it was pretty quick fall from my peak of my career, if you will. But thankfully, I really feel like, the timing, there was purpose in all of that. What I only didn't have a job for a couple of days before I started my job at Pure Charity. Pure Charity also works with nonprofits, but they don't just work with a few dozen like 5Q. They're a technology company, so we literally, when I was there, worked with hundreds of nonprofits, thousands used our software. And in this role, I was the chief marketing officer. In this role, I got to have another perspective of the nonprofit industry, which was very valuable for me. And got to rebrand some of Pure Charity's work and redo a lot of their messaging. And it was a really enjoyable job. But a year and a half or so into that job, I got laid off again. And at this point, you start to question, like, am I just horrible at everything? And you start to really doubt yourself after back-to-back getting let go. And again, it was like, hey, this isn't about your performance. We still want to work with you as a contract partner and all this, but still, you question yourself, right? And so that was hard. But behind the scenes in all this, I always dreamed of having my own business, and I did actually create Branches Mission Land, my company, like 9 years ago, back when I was still at Dayspring. But it was always just a dream to go full time in it. And I think I was never ready until I had these unique experiences at Seed Company, at 5Q, at Pure Charity. And the time was finally right to go for it and go all in with this company, Branches Mission Lab. And so that's what I'm doing today. And at Branches, we come alongside nonprofits, ministries, and good makers is what we call them, people that are just making good things happen in the world. And we help them grow their reach, grow their audience, so that they can raise the funds they need, get the support they need, and ultimately impact and help more people. We're very cause-oriented, purpose-driven business. We are a business. We're not a nonprofit, but we work mostly with nonprofits and, again, purpose-driven individuals and companies. And I love it. It's a dream. I literally couldn't imagine doing anything more aligned with who I am. That's why I created it. I was like, this is the thing that I want to do the most, and it's a dream. So I love it. But it was quite the journey to get here. So any questions? I'll pause for a second on that. I'm about to enter into the 5 things here in a second, but any questions, feel free to put them in the chat.
I just want to briefly say, Jesse, I really appreciate, and I don't take for granted, that you're so transparent. I think most guest speakers will just come tell you the highlight reel of all the things they've done great. And I think it's so important to know that every single person faces a challenge and has bumps. And I've always admired how you just push through it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's hard to share that stuff, to be honest, but I just want to be as honest and helpful as I can be. So you can ask me anything and I'll do my best to tell you the truth and be completely vulnerable and transparent with you guys. I want to help you. That's why I'm here. So I think it helps to know that, sometimes things don't go as planned, and yet there's purpose in that. And for me, I look back on the 2 times I got let go, and I'm thankful. Truly, I'm not just saying that, I'm thankful for that. In the moment, I might not have been, but now looking back, I certainly am. And it was hard. I'm not saying it wasn't hard, but hard things are where we grow. It's hard to grow when things are going great and easy, right? So those things led me to where I am, without a doubt. So, okay. I wanted to quickly show you this. This is the framework that we run our business on. I developed this, and we use it to guide our nonprofit and good maker clients through building out their marketing, building out their strategy. And so we always start with the heart. We always start with the brand and understanding who they are and their vision, mission, their why, understanding their personality as a brand. And then we work together to define their audience and understand their audience's goals and challenges and needs. We build their marketing mind next, and that's the systems, their funnel, the journey of their audience. Then we move on to the face of their nonprofit, which is their website, the first impression usually. And then we build out the arms so they can reach their audiences, which is social media and email are the kind of primary ways that they're reaching their audiences. And then we get things moving quicker with their legs. We give them legs with an influencer marketing strategy. We call that ally or partners, and then an ad strategy, advertising. So just wanted to introduce you to this framework. It's a lot of fun going through that time and time again. So just to see if you're paying attention, where do we start with our nonprofit clients? I'll go back to here. What's the place we always start to make sure they understand? Yeah, we start with their heart, start with the heart of their organization, their brand, and then we move to their audience heart. You guys got it. Good job. Okay. So a couple other quick exercises. We do this really fun brand libs personality exercise, and within 30 minutes, they can understand their own brand better because we personify it. It's kind of like Mad Libs, if you're familiar with that, but plug in some words. We describe their brand as if it was a person, and that's a lot of fun. We define their audience with these simple templates, and then we help map their audience through a journey. And we say, how does someone become going from unaware to aware, and how do they first engage and take action? And this is a system, this is a framework that we're taking people through time and time again, and it's proving to be super helpful. Oftentimes nonprofits just don't think like this. They just don't understand these principles. And so even though they're kind of basic, it makes a huge, huge difference for these organizations. So I'm curious, you guys are all marketing experts at this point, right? So what are some ways you would say to reach new audiences, unaware audiences? So top of the funnel type of things. if I was to coach a nonprofit, I'll probably have a call later today with somebody trying to help them do this. I talk about it every day. Got any ideas for me? What would you suggest? I'm sure you're typing away with all your brilliant ideas right now, so I'm just gonna wait. Social media, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Yep. Good answer, Emily. You want to unmute and unpack that for me so I can take a break from talking?
Sure. I really like, especially with us, we all have our phones and we're very like technology driven. Even on our computers, like we're doing like Zooms and all this stuff with quarantine. I just really feel like everyone's getting very involved in social media more. So I think like Instagram or Facebook or like even like TikTok is blown up, just having little ads there or like posting stuff just so people see it more, like having people share it. I think that'll reach a lot more people.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Absolutely something we talk about a lot. Guerrilla marketing, Kyle. I love those are some of my favorite words on earth that you just said. So, will you tell us what you mean?
Yeah, just for guerrilla marketing, just making it a kind of piece, whether that's like something in a, so like, for example, I remember seeing guerrilla marketing in like a mall where they just have a giant ad on the floor. So people are like walking across an ad and sometimes they don't notice it, but whenever they do, they realize it's a giant ad that they're walking on. And so making your brand super noticeable, the point of like that it's kind of in your face, but like that's the whole point is like if they are unaware and don't care, you make them aware in the most in the biggest way possible.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't like, but you're not also sacrificing like the way that your brand operates. So you're doing it in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that's really good. I love it. Yeah, that's one thing that we always are trying to convince people in this moment is saying that like it's hard. People, so two big things that you're going to face in the marketing space. Like for one, people think marketing is just talking about how awesome their company is. Like they're like marketing is just like saying we're great, here's our value, here's what we do. And actually like no one's going to pay attention to that, right? That's who cares, especially if they're unaware. Like maybe once they're engaged and they're fans or tribe members, they're like, oh yeah, we love you, we're gonna pay attention. But if all you ever do is talk about how great your company or brand is, then you're gonna get, in this world we live in today, you're gonna get muted, unfollowed, unsubscribed, like no thanks, this isn't, how does this help me with my life, right? What's in it for me? And so we always say that when someone's unaware, they don't care. And so it's your job, your only job is to get their attention. So at this point, you're just trying to get their attention, which is really hard these days. Everybody's trying to get their attention. And so the way we do that typically is say you have to understand your audience's goals, challenges, and needs. So that's why we go back and define those in the avatar here. Say, what are their goals, challenges, and needs? So that's what keeps them up at night. That's what's bugging them every day. That's the thing. If you can solve that, all of a sudden you've got their attention, right? If you can take away that irritation that they have, or if you can help them achieve their goal, so all of a sudden it flips the script and you're not talking about yourself, you're not talking about your brand, and you're not the hero anymore, your audience is, and that changes everything. And all of a sudden, so that audience-centric, customer-centric mentality in marketing is critical when you're reaching new audiences. So sorry, I went on a tangent. This is something I'm passionate about. So good job, guys. You had some good ideas. I appreciate your input. Got me thinking about guerrilla marketing again. Haven't thought about that in a couple, weeks. All right, so let's jump into the 5 ways to crush your first real job. This is why you're here. So I'm sure you're ready to hear the actual meat of the content. So number 1, I put this as number 1 because I think it's most important. Based on where you're at today, forming habits is one of the most important things you can do to become who you want to be. So it starts by asking yourself, who do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? And as you get clarity on that, as you define that, asking yourself, how do I get there? What habits, what like type of lifestyle does that person live? And that starts to narrow you in pretty quickly on the habits you should be forming. I heard, have you heard the analogy of like they the ladder is up against the wrong wall. So this whole idea of like you're climbing, and then you realize you actually were up against the wrong wall and you got somewhere you didn't want to go, right? So you're forming habits. You already have habits, right? Are they taking you where you actually want to be or not? And I just want to say right now, this moment for you all, as you're transitioning from a college student to a professional or whatever's next for you, this is a big transition, and it's an opportunity to be intentional about the habits you form. You're going to change your habits. When you change your routine, your schedule, where you go every day, what you do, your habits will change. The question is, are you going to be the one that decides what those are? Are you going to be intentional about that? Or is it just going to happen by random, by chance? And so I would encourage you to take some time right now before you graduate and say, like, what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of habits does that person have? And start picking one at a time and working toward those habits. It's super, super important. So not just to make you better, but make you happy, make you who you want to become. There's this book, Atomic Habits. I highly recommend it. I think you guys have probably already talked about it some. It's huge in helping you think about how to do this. I don't have the discipline just to one day say, I'm going to create a new habit and then go do it. But this system that James Clear unpacks has made it way more doable for me to form new habits and break bad habits. So it's still hard, but this has been helpful. So I want to encourage you to read this book. It's life-changing type of content, and then pick one or two habits and try to form it. I love this quote: we do not decide our futures, we decide our habits, and our habits decide our futures. So keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to watch real quick. I want to show you a few of my daily habits just to give you some examples. Some of these, I've had for a long time. Some are new thanks to COVID. Things have had a little shake up in my habits. All right, now I'm going to show you this little video, which I think is fun and helpful when it comes to habits. But first, we get to watch an advertisement.
Moisturizers with natural oil leaves underarms feeling healthy and protected, and you more confident and carefree. Effective protection, kind to skin.
A few years ago, I felt like I was stuck in a rut. So I decided to follow in the footsteps of the great American philosopher, Morgan Spurlock, and try something new for 30 days. The idea is actually pretty simple. Think about something you've always wanted to add to your life and try it for the next 30 days. It turns out 30 days is just about the right amount of time to add a new habit or subtract a habit, like watching the news, from your life. There's a few things that I learned while doing these 30-day challenges. The first was, instead of the months flying by forgotten, the time was much more memorable. This was part of a challenge I did to take a picture every day for a month. And I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing that day. I also noticed that as I started to do more and harder 30-day challenges, my self-confidence grew. I went from desk-dwelling computer nerd to the kind of guy who bikes to work for fun. Even last year, I ended up hiking up Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa. I would never have been that adventurous before I started my 30-day challenges. I also figured out that if you really want something badly enough, you can do anything for 30 days. Have you ever wanted to write a novel? Every November, tens of thousands of people try to write their own 50,000-word novel from scratch in 30 days. It turns out all you have to do is write 1,667 words a day for a month. So I did. By the way, the secret is not to go to sleep until you've written your words for the day. You might be sleep deprived, but you'll finish your novel. Now, is my book the next great American novel? No, I wrote it in a month. It's awful. But for the rest of my life, if I meet John Hodgman at a TED party, I don't have to say, I'm a computer scientist. No. If I want to, I can say, I'm a novelist. So here's one last thing I'd like to mention. I learned that when I made small, sustainable changes, things I could keep doing, they were more likely to stick. There's nothing wrong with big, crazy challenges. In fact, they're a ton of fun, but they're less likely to stick. When I gave up sugar for 30 days, day 31 looked like this. So here's my question to you. What are you waiting for? I guarantee you the next 30 days are going to pass whether you like it or not. So why not think about something you have always wanted to try and give it a shot for the next 30 days? Thanks.
All right, set my video back up. Okay, so I think that's a really practical, inspiring talk, and I found everything he said to be true. That starting small, keeping it focused, 30 days is a great time frame to say I can do this for 30 days. It gives you that time. So I would encourage you to think about one or two habits. Pick one though, because if you try and do more than one, it's probably going to be harder to actually follow through. So pick one at a time and go for it. Go for it for 30 days and try to knock that out and maybe form a lifelong habit that really shapes you. And it could be small. It could be easy at first. And I think if you're new at forming habits, it might be smart to start small and keep it easy. Maybe it's like he said, just taking a picture a day. I mean, that's pretty easy, but meaningful. And I think that once you kind of start to look, I've got this muscle, I can do this, then it'll be easier next time. So I would encourage you to write it down. You can put it in the chat and share it if you're inspired to do so. But think about what is one habit you want to work on now. And I'd love to challenge you to read that book too. I think it is truly life-changing to start thinking about habits. Okay, so number 2, get a job you care about. So this is easier said than done, but it is doable. And we talked about this in the last class. And even if it's not your first job, finding something you're passionate about, something that you love to do, is a goal we should all have. And I want to give you guys hope and vision for your career that you can find this. I certainly have. So what is good stuff look like for you? For me, I told you my story, right? That's why I told you my story. For me, I was transformed. My life was changed when I read the Bible for the first time and kind of got to know Jesus. And so I want to find a job where I'm helping somehow, even if it's indirect, helping others kind of have that experience that I had. For you, it might be something totally different. You may be passionate about animals or passionate about, some product line or, fashion or something that is totally you. And I think that thing you need to know and only you need to know, no one else can tell you necessarily what that is. And ask yourself, how can I find a job doing that thing I care about? And like I said, it may not be that first job, but I think even in that first job, often you can find a project, you can find a relationship, you can find something about it that has purpose that you can get excited about. And here's why it's so important. You spend most of your life working. It is a lot. And so why not position yourself for impact, position yourself to do something that matters. Like I said, I grew up as a child, wanting to be wealthy. And that was what drove me as a child, inspired me to be in the business world and all this. But looking now at my life, I realized that just isn't enough. That's not a motivation for me anymore. That's not, that is not what drives me. And I know so many friends they're making great money. But they're asking me gosh, is there a job that you could help me find with more meaning and purpose? And because I just don't believe in the company I work for. I don't believe in the job I'm doing. It's, it just doesn't get me excited. And I've been here for 10 years and I'm seeing my life pass by, and I want to do something that matters. And so even if it takes a few years, even if it takes a few jobs, keep a vision for purpose in your, like, who are you impacting and how are you doing that? And that doesn't mean it has to be in the nonprofit world. Absolutely, so much purpose in all kinds of jobs, in all kinds of industries. I just want you to be have that vision for your career. So how do you do that? Like, that's a question I have. If you have ideas, feel free to post them. I mean, I believe it starts by understanding yourself, understanding what you actually love. So when do you lose track of time? Ask yourself that. Like, what are you doing when you lose track of time? What do you just love to do in your free time? What are hobbies that you have? What are passions you have? You know, one of my friends is passionate about coffee. And so he's trying to see if he can get into some industry, some maybe company that works with Walmart that's in coffee, or some, you know, coffee company. And that's because he loves coffee. I mean, that matters to him. What do you love to do? What keeps you up at night? What are problems in this world that you see them and they make you angry, right? I think there's something there. You might want to pay attention to that. If you get super passionate about an issue, maybe that you could find a job trying to solve that issue or change that. And ultimately ask yourself, you know, what impact do you want to have in your life? You know, what do you want? And then use your work for that. I mean, I would challenge you, especially like looking at my life right now. If I'm married, I have 3 kids, like, I don't have a lot of time for side projects, side things. Like, so I want to spend my job, my core amount of my day, investing in something that matters and that has an impact. And so you can get creative about how to find that. But I would say keep looking for it. I love Seth Godin's quote: instead of wondering when your next vacation is, maybe you should set up a life you don't need to escape from. And don't get me wrong, I love vacation and I love the weekends, but I also love the jobs that I've had, and every one of them, for the most part, have been enjoyable and I've looked forward to them. And so that is possible. That is something that you can find, and I want to encourage you to look for it. So I would be curious if anybody wants to share, if you have a dream job or company in mind. Like, it'd be fun to see that. But you don't have to. But I mean, if someone's got this company that they just love, their values, they love what they stand for, they love their product, and you'd love to work there, put it in there. I think it's helpful to think about these things because it gets us kind of thinking about new ideas for where we might work and the careers we might have. So. Okay, number 3, I want to encourage you to invest in relationships at work, in your company, in your jobs. Relationships not only are strategic and help you be successful, they just make your work more fun. When you enjoy the people, you know the people you're working with, it can make the job more enjoyable. So I would encourage you right out of the gate, you know, right in that new job, invest in relationships, invest in the people around you. Like, stop and get to know them. Ask a lot of questions, even if you're an introvert. And so I've actually got a challenge for you, and that is to make friends, get to know people in the first 30 days. And I mean everyone, like everyone that you come in contact with. So if you're working virtually because of COVID, you know, maybe that's all the different people that you have meetings with and the people that work on your team. Like, set up one-on-one calls with them and get to know them, ask them questions, learn about their personal life, learn about what they're passionate about, their hobbies, you know. If you're in the office environment, you know, all the people that sit around you, all the people that you walk by in the kitchen, all those people, like, get to know those people, because I guarantee you it'll pay off and you'll enjoy your job more. It's weird because your first 30 days, you might be busy thinking about how to get the job done, or you're focused on your boss or whatever. But after those 30 days, it's a little awkward to go to someone that you sit, you know, just 10 feet from and say, by the way, I've never said hi. I've been here for 30 days. And, you know, my name is Maggie. My name is Jacob. Like, it's weird at that point. You do it in the first 30 days while you're still the new person. Do it in the first 5 days. Do it right out of the gate, because then it's not awkward and, you know, you're the new person. It gets awkward the longer you wait. But you might realize that you need that person to get a project done. You need a relationship with that person to understand the dynamics of the office, you know. So have those conversations early and be intentional about it. Okay, beyond friendships and relationships, I also want to encourage you to get a mentor. And I always say dream big. Something that Tim Ferriss says in the 4-Hour Work Week is that it's actually easier to get like the dream mentors, the top 1%, because no one else is trying. Everybody's too intimidated or afraid to ask. So you might be the only one that actually goes for it. So I've had this experience at Dayspring and Seed Company. I had the founder of the organization, both were in their 70s or 80s, mentor me, and they had so much wisdom, so much to offer me. And people were jealous. They were like, how did you get that mentor relationship? Like, I was like, oh, I just asked them if they would have lunch, and then asked them at lunch if they would keep meeting with me every once in a while. And it's that simple, you know? And so it was very, very valuable to me in so many ways, personal networking, just so rich. And I want to encourage you guys, don't be afraid to ask people to mentor you, and don't be afraid to dream big. So maybe even think now, like, who would that be? And I encourage you, put it in the chat. Like, what is the value in a mentor? Like, why is there value there? Do you have any thoughts on that, ideas? Just 1 word or 2 words on like why you think it'd be good to have a mentor. Yeah, Molly says accountability, and I love that one because we can have all the best intentions in the world, but we need accountability. Yeah, for experience, for the bad days. That's right. Sometimes there's no one to talk to about the hard things or the problems we're facing, and a mentor is a great person that you can just unload and process and get input from. Yeah, future steps in your career. Yeah, so many good answers here. Knowledge, growth, motivation, wisdom, referrals. Yep, for sure. Motivation, knowledge, yep, growth. So good. All right, so go for it, guys. It's not that hard to make that ask. And then if they say no, just go. Don't be discouraged. Can look for someone else. I think there's probably lots of people out there that could bring value to you. So write it down now. If a name is coming to mind, if a person's coming to mind right now, maybe take a note of that somewhere, circle back to it later, and just think about how you might approach them. And if you don't want to make it too formal and you don't want to say, will you be my mentor? But just ask them to lunch, ask them to coffee or tea, and then at the end of it, if it goes well, ask them to do it again. Say, hey, could we meet again in a month or 2? And then, you follow up, you stick with it, and then do it again every time. And then eventually you've got a mentor. All right, number 4, I want to encourage you to bust up status quo, make change in the organizations you're a part of. Change is always needed. And if you see where change is needed, if you see the status quo, don't be afraid to push up against it. And here's the thing, you actually have a ton of value by being new and by being maybe younger or by having a fresh eyes. You bring a new perspective. Your tendency is going to be to think, oh, I'm the new person, I don't get it. And unfortunately, the truth is the other people in the organization may think that about you too, which is not true. And so don't allow that perception to keep you from speaking up in meetings, suggesting things to your boss. And there's a good way to go about that. Maybe it's not in a huge meeting with 20 people and whatever. Maybe it's one-on-one with your supervisor. Maybe it's in an email. But like, really don't be afraid to share your ideas. And there's 2 things I want to warn you about when you do that. Number 1, you're going to face resistance. Like, when you have a new idea to make change, people don't like change. Like, a lot of people are not a fan of change. And so when you suggest it, you're going to get pushback. Just get ready for that. It's going to happen, but I believe it's worth it. If you really believe in the change and it's what's right, or even you think it's what's right, it's worth it to go through the effort of trying to make that change. Even if it never happens, you're growing by learning how to make change and how to suggest differences. So the other thing I want to warn you about is, here, I'll come back to that. When you make change, innovate, and think different, you're going to hear, we've tried that before. You almost always, someone's going to say, yeah, we've thought of that. Great idea. We thought of that. We tried that before. And just because they say that, don't let that shut you down. You maybe they need to try it again, or maybe they need to do it differently this time. And if that's the answer to every new idea, then that organization is going to die. Like they can't just give up on things too soon or never make change. And so I want to encourage you to not be too discouraged by that and press through it and still try to make the change. So be thinking about how you can respond to that comment. We've tried that before. I want to show you this video. It's one of my favorite ads of all time, and it is right in this line of thinking differently. Great inspiration.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. But the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
So go for it. Make change, innovate, think different, even in your first job. I want to encourage you to do that and grow that muscle of making change, because it's super valuable. And yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to, this is a great quote on this. Your art is what you do, and no one can tell you exactly how to do it. Your art is the act of taking personal responsibility, challenging the status quo, and changing people. To me, like, if you're doing that kind of art, that kind of personal responsibility and making change and changing people, you can find purpose in any company, any job. And so even if you have to take a job that doesn't feel like a dream job, if you're doing this, you can get excited every day. You can look forward to going to work. You can find purpose and value in that role. So real quick, I want to share this story of how I got to make change at Seed Company. We got to rebrand the organization. I got to lead this. And in this process, we unpacked the how, the what, the why of what we do at the Seed Company. And it was a really fun project. We ended up this was the old magazine, and we made it into this periodical with a whole new photography style, new fonts, new design, and a whole new way of telling stories. And it was so different than everybody else in the missions world. It looked different. It sounded different. The photography was different. And we actually won an award for this, first place in our industry. So it sounds like a success story, right? And it was to some extent. But then after I left Seed Company and transitioned out, and a couple other people left, they moved straight back to the old way of doing things, the old photography style, the old size, the old format, making it all about the Seed Company with the logo front and center versus being about the movement, about the people. And it's so sad, but what I learned in that lesson is that you make change. It's like a rubber band. You stretch, but if you aren't careful and you remove that force of change without it kind of being stretched fully or stuck or sticking, then it's going to snap right back into the status quo. And that's kind of what happened. I think some of the things that we did stuck and has changed the organization forever, but a lot of the things progress we made snapped right back. So what was the lesson in that? Why did that happen? It's because we didn't take the organization with us. We thought, hey, we've got the authority, we've got the skill set, we can make this happen. We can go do this. And we did, and it was great. But then we realized that we didn't take the whole organization with us. There were people in the company that didn't get it. They didn't understand why we were doing things differently. And the status quo is powerful, guys. Like, people find comfort and they snap right back to it if you're not careful. And so it's a lesson learned for me. So is there a status quo that you need to break right now in your current company or a team you're on, or in your family even? Like, is there something that needs to be challenged? Like, you know what? I think we can do better. I think we can do things differently. And I just want to challenge you to think about that. Okay, number 5 for Q&A. I want to ask you guys to think about the culture of an organization when you go into a new company, a new organization, and challenge you to restore people and culture. There's always brokenness. There's always hard things, right? Everyone is struggling in different ways. Be a force of restoration and good, and shape the culture that you want to be a part of. And sometimes that means being more positive than cool. And what that means is, here's a scenario. You're sitting around the break room and people start talking negative about the boss, about leadership, about the work you're doing, about your customers, your clients. And it's so easy to just chime into and be like, hey, kind of the cool thing to do, if you will, the easy thing is just to jump in and add to it. But what that creates is a culture of negativity. It creates a culture, it's kind of toxic, honestly. People don't want to be there because all they're doing is thinking about all the bad things, and they're complaining about one another. Another thing is they're probably going to be talking about you when you're not in the room, you know? And so you're actually adding to the problem that you have to then deal with. You're creating a culture you probably don't want to be a part of. So I want to encourage you to be positive. Like, be, you know, everybody's talking bad about the leadership. Maybe say, well, I hear what you're saying, but you know, I'm really thankful for the way that they handled this, or something. You know, say something. And does that feel cool? No. Like, people are like, oh, okay, you know, buzzkill. But you're actually saying, look, like I'm going to try to be grateful, try and be positive, and create a culture that I want to work at long term. And so you're doing yourself a favor and the organization. And because the truth is, negativity spreads like wildfire, and it's just easy for that to happen. And so I would encourage you to try not to be a part of that. So a couple questions to ask yourself. What effect do you currently have on team culture? We all affect the culture we're a part of. We just do, whether we like it or not. What effect do you have? And then what effect do you want to have on team culture going forward? And just ask yourself those questions. Okay, I think I've saved 5, 6, 7 minutes for questions. And I love the questions, so please bring some questions to the table. I would love to answer them.
While folks are thinking of questions, I just want to say I read an article the other day, Jesse, that talked about how in this time of Zoom and remote and increased emails, that employee dissatisfaction is up, that negativity is up. And I think it's because we don't know how to process a lot of messages that we get, because we don't have all the nonverbal communication around it. I talked to our dean about this, and he said he has spent more time handling personnel issues in the last 6 months than in all the 40 years of his career combined before then.
Wow.
From hurt feelings, from anger. And I've really thought about that a lot in terms of your last piece of advice there.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's such a big thing. And I think we could talk about that a lot. And there's actually one of the first questions is kind of related to keeping a culture, you know, maintaining a culture. And I guess the thing, the real practical thing that reminds me of this whole Zoom space we're in, I would just encourage you, I've made this exact mistake, is a lot of the business that we do these days is over Zoom, or for us, it's Slack. I don't know if you guys use Slack, but we're just constantly using Slack. And so I make it a point, and this is a really hard thing to do, but I make it a point to ask the people on my team, like, hey, like, where have I messed up? Like, where could I do better? How can I grow as a leader? And that's hard to ask, and it's hard for them to be honest, but I'm trying to create an environment where we can be transparent. And one of them recently told me, you kind of sometimes just send us a quick Slack message with something to do without a lot of details. Like, you don't share enough information. So then we're struggling to get it done. And that was so helpful. And I think that it points out a bigger picture. Communication right now is happening differently. And because there's no nonverbal and body language over Slack, and even Zoom is lacking, you tend to communicate faster, shorter, quicker, and it doesn't communicate as well. And I think that means we have to do a little bit extra work, write longer emails, get on phone calls more often, get face-to-face when you can, turn the video on, and take the extra effort to communicate better and fuller. So I always say over-communicate. But I don't know if that's going to solve it, but it's certainly one thing we can do. So I'm going to jump into a couple of these questions. So what type of culture would you say Branches Mission Lab has? That's a great question. We have our core values that really shape our culture. And so I'll rattle those off to you. So the first one is abide or die. And it's a saying that our company will die if we don't abide in Jesus. And that's why we're named Branches. In John 15, Jesus says, abide in me and you'll bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And so that was why we named the company Branches. And so we believe that if we're not sticking with Jesus, we can't actually do anything worthwhile that lasts. And so that's something that's important to us. We also say we are humble but hungry. And so what that means is we know that we're not the best. We need help. We need each other, but we are working hard and we're hungry. So humble but hungry. And then we also say that we are next level good makers, which means we're not settling for like low quality. We want to be excellent and world class in what we do and make good. And then why am I forgetting? There's one more. Let's see, abide or die. Anyway, it'll come back to me later, but I want to jump into some other questions. So what we do is repeat those often, talk about them, and then we try to call them out and reward when people are doing it, like really celebrate when people are doing the kind of things you want to see happen. So that's a lot more fun than getting on to people who aren't, and it works. How do you discern between situations where challenging status quo or conformity is better, or should challenging status quo be constant? I don't think statusing the challenge quo is constant. That would be exhausting. But I think it is something that you have to ask yourself, like, is this worth it? It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be hard. Is this really worth it? Is this a small thing? Is this something worth moving on and being okay with? Or is this super important and worth challenging the status quo? So that would be my best advice. You're not always doing that, but it's pretty frequent if you're willing to engage. How do you mentally keep the confidence to continue to push positivity and change the status quo, being the new guy? I mean, part of that mentally is just being healthy yourself, like being able to have healthy routines so that you're not burned out or you're not on overdrive, So for me, that's some of those habits that I have in my own life that gives me the energy and the mental strength to do that and confidence. I also think just always learning and growing, whether that be reading or listening to podcasts, things that gives you more confidence. So those are some things. And then I think just keeping a list of gratitude, thinking always about and forcing myself to list off things I'm grateful for and thankful for. That fosters positivity in me and in my family. I do this with my daughters, and it's crazy. They'll be complaining and whining and saying all these bad things. And I'll be like, all right, everybody list 3 things you're thankful for. And literally after we all do that, everybody's in a better mood. Everybody sees like, life isn't horrible. There's some things to be grateful for. So it's a really helpful exercise. A usual interview question: what's your biggest failure? Oh gosh, that'll take too long. I mean, I've had several projects just flop. One at Dayspring, 1 or 2 at Seed Company. So, I mean, that would take a while to explain, but also obviously gotten let go a couple times. So it's been tough. What is the biggest lesson you learned either in college or while making the transition from college to the real world? I think the habits thing is huge. Like that's why it's number 1. I would just say, the habits that I had in college, the ones that I made in the transition, really are powerful. And looking back, time will fly, and you want to make sure you're intentional about that. There's a couple more questions, but I know it's also 10:45. So Molly, do you want to jump in?
You know what I'd love to do, Jesse, is maybe you could take the last 2 questions, and if you shoot me an email about them in your all your non-existent spare time, then I'll make sure that we talk about them in our next class, if that works, because they're great questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Think about circling back. But I just want to say thank you for being transparent, for always giving your time. And I take something from this every time. I'm super excited about this week's assignment because it's going to be reflecting on these and picking out one of the key pieces of advice and elaborating on it. So I can't wait to see to my students what you do with this. We'll be back on Thursday with Amanda Rosen from Geometry Global. But Jesse, thank you so much. Big round of applause. And hope you have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to meet you guys. Have a good one. Let me know if you need anything.